All right, it is 4:01, February 10th for the ad hoc committee meeting. We have our folks from the charter school here. We have ourselves right now. We have one board member that's having trouble getting on, so I have him on speakerphone. Per our agenda, let me bring it up here. We can redo introductions again. You guys want to go first? Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Tracy Kennedy. I'm the CEO at the Sugar Valley Rural Charter School.
Hi, I'm Bill Deaver. I'm Administrative Coordinator at Sugar Valley Rural Charter School.
Hi, I'm Sandy Garverick, board member from the Sugar Valley Rural Charter School.
Hi, I'm Bill Huey, Hoey, and I'm the Associate Director of the Sugar Valley Rural Charter School.
And I'm Brock Phillips, Supervisor of Curriculum and Instruction K-12 at Sugar Valley Rural Charter School.
Jeff Johnston, board member with Keystone.
Frank Redmond, Superintendent of Keystone Central.
Bill? Bill, can you hear us?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Bill Baldino. I'm a board member, KCSD.
And Chris Scaff, board member and the chairman of this committee. Going to start the meeting off by saying that I have to stay totally neutral both ways. But this meeting is going to be about fact, not past stories, not things that have gone on except for the last 5 years ago. We want to keep it to the fact because I don't believe in moving backwards. I believe we're all here to move forwards. So we need to follow through with that. Do we have any visitors that wanted to talk, Christine? Come on up to the mic if you have something to say.
My name's Ashley Shadle.
Speak into your mic.
Oh, I can just get closer. My name's Ashley Shadle. I am the mayor of Loganton and live just a couple of houses down from the charter school. I have one son who graduated, one son who is a junior, and if my daughter was still with us, she would be in the 9th grade. We have been part of the Sugar Valley family for 12 years. And Sugar Valley is one of the reasons that we actually moved up here. We are a military family and we chose to raise our kids in Loganton because that's where the charter school was. I have kept track on the test scores, on the funding, where it goes, who does what. And I'm going to tell you, especially since we're sticking to the most recent 5 years, what they're doing at the charter school is phenomenal. Those test scores have gone up. And my son, who has an IEP or had an IEP, graduated because he has severe ADHD, got some of the best test scores in this district at Sugar Valley. Considering the fact that roughly a third of their student population is special education, and they're still blowing you guys out of the water test score wise, should really say something about the capacity in which not only your funding is grossly miscalculated, but the fact that you are not putting it in the places it needs to go. It's quite an embarrassment for the district, but for me, I'm proud of the school that's in my town. I am proud of those people who have become like family to me. Not only do they know what they're doing as far as the curriculum they're using, the way that they're teaching, their skills, and their caring. I don't know where I would be without these people for the fact that I had to watch my daughter die of cancer. They watched her die too. and it affected them just as deeply as it did our family. I've watched this district. I've talked to teachers in this district. I have had teachers that are currently working for Central Mountain tell me that they have seen their students go over to Sugar Valley, and it's been the best thing that's ever happened to them. Right now, one of my coworkers, her daughter's getting ready to start kindergarten. She is looking at a house in another district to do anything to keep her kids from going here. With the amount of money that you spend on your staff and your students, these kids need to be getting a hell of a lot better education than what you guys are providing. And the fact that we have to constantly renew the charter after they've proven time and time again that they're one of the best schools around is ridiculous. These guys not only sacrifice their time, but their emotions and their own money out of pocket too, to make sure that those kids have everything they need. And I've never seen the level of caring that these people have anywhere in Keystone Central. The fact that you guys cannot, go ahead, Kurt.
I gotta tell you, you got 1 minute left.
Okay, thank you. The only thing I can say is you guys may want to shut the charter down or cut their funding, but I think you need to keep an eye on them and see exactly what they're doing, and maybe you guys could learn a lesson. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody got any questions for? We have 2 items on the agenda, the charter school amendment request and new items. I don't know anything about the new items. Could anybody explain that? Because
It's just
It
in
wasn't-
in case there's things that hadn't been on there before, that it's just a space for flexibility for either Sugar Valley to bring up or the committee to bring up. It's all.
okay. Last meeting we had was Thursday, January 23rd. We had the guests that are here today from the charter school. Just a quick overview of the minutes. We did our introductions. I noted that we received application submission from the Sugar Valley Rural Charter School. And a special meeting on January 16th, the board discussed policy 140 and asking for a 45-day extension, which was granted and was discussed. We discussed the charter renewal process. I reviewed the process for the charter school renewal application. Sugar Valley Rural Charter School submitted its application for the 5-year renewal. Typically, there is a period during which the application is reviewed by the district's ad hoc committee. Meetings will be scheduled between the both of us, representative to discuss renewal items, including performance, compliance, any potential revisions to the agreement. And after negotiations and review, the school board will vote on whether to renew the charter school. Any additional conditions or terms, if approved, the terms of the renewed agreement will be set for 5 more years. If the application is denied, the charter school has a right to appeal the decision. Mr. Phillips mentioned that the schools requested a few adjustments to the agreement based on their experiences over the past 5 years. I asked the Sugar Valley Rural Charter School to email requested adjustments to Dr. Redmond and myself so that we can review them during an upcoming ad hoc meeting. And then we set the calendar for today's date and for another meeting, February 26th, if need be. Jeff, are you good with those minutes?
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
how about you, Tracy, you folks? Okay. So that's where we are leading up to today. You did send us your letter with the 4 items to discuss. I say we just take one at a time and go down through them and see where we get to. Number one was eliminate the second assessment required in paragraphs in section 6A. Over the past 5 years, map testing from NWEA has greatly helped us address student needs and provided a common language for teachers to make meaningful changes that support student success, given the negative impact of excessive assessments on students. And it reads on, we now aim to focus on helping students perform on their MAP test 3 times a year. We find value in having the liberty to use additional assessments to gain further data that helps us support our students, but do not find it helpful would be required to implement a second assessment for every student performing below grade level. So do you guys want to talk on that first?
So I kind of tuning in for some of the previous meetings have come to the conclusion that there are just some questions as to how it is that we're really using map testing to, not just to screen, but to, kind of diagnose and get a little bit deeper into, what our students' needs actually are and how do we communicate that information in a way that's actionable for our teachers across the board. It has certainly been a pretty interesting 5 years figuring out exactly how that all works, but I do want to say that I'm happy to be able to provide some clarity for that here today. And it sounds like you might be interested in hearing a little bit more in depth about some of the others we've been using. So at this point, of course, 3 times a year, we ask our students in grades K to 12 to take their map tests. In kindergarten and first grade, that's only a reading and a math test. And for grades 2 through 12, we add in the language test as well. So following each of those assessments every day, part of my duties are to collect that information and then to kind of aggregate that and then filter out any kind of anomalies that we see, just to keep track on a daily basis that everything's going right. And whenever it's not, that I can begin to do my own investigations. Anytime where I'm seeing things that are of concern, whether that may be, just a handful of students at a grade level, or perhaps it's just one specific test at a grade level, that cues me in to maybe looking a little bit more closely, what are the patterns? Overall, I do have some programs that I've written that help me to tease that out quickly and efficiently so that I can spend my time actually getting with the teachers in those affected classrooms, or, just interviewing those individuals to find out what might have been a little bit off for that student if we're off trajectory that we've normally seen from those students. So we're looking for, inordinate dips in test scores where students had a pretty solid growth trajectory over time, or, if students are dropping, double-digit points, that's certainly a cause for concern. And so, as I'm collecting that information, I'm keeping an eye out for those things, and I'm making appointments with teachers to find out what more is going on. And whenever it's prudent, I'm getting with students and just checking in to ask, was it just an off day? Is there something else that's going on here, and finding out a little bit more information from the students as well. Of course, once we actually start putting together the information, that's something that we take to a couple of our curriculum teams, and MTSS is going to be part of that, of course. So whenever we're addressing concerns that are brought forth from, anybody from the MTSS team, I'm also posing a lot of these situations that I'm seeing and, sharing the information that I have with that team so that we can begin putting our efforts together to try to get to the bottom of what might be going on there. Of course, I'm also taking this information to, with MTSS, then of course, we're putting in place any different number of interventions, things that we've seen work in similar situations in the past or at neighboring grade levels. And in cases where it's very few students, it might be, a more individualized touch point, something that we can do with just a handful. Of course, I take the information to what we've termed my curriculum and data and innovation team. It's a team of expert teachers at the school that have above the line talents as it relates to curriculum and data. The folks that are responsible for determining needs in the school and also delivering professional development, professional learning. And so the role of that team is to analyze the data and to determine, what more can be done from professional learning standpoint. Anything that we can inject into our in-service days to try to address these things, or again, setting up meetings with individual teachers or a couple of grade bands in order to dig a little bit deeper. Whenever these things happen, then we're setting targets with those individuals, sort of like a curriculum coaching. developing a plan of action, what things we'd like to see that are changing, how we're going to address that. With all of our teachers, though, we do hold conversations analyzing class level data so that we can make inferences based on what gaps are evident at each class. And we compare that to the curriculum that's upcoming in the next couple of months before the next MAP testing term. So we make a lot of efforts to connect the data that we're getting in the MAP testing, using crosswalks and other kinds of curriculum resources to make sure we're connecting to the standards that we're addressing in our instruction at math and ELA. And making sure that we're looking ahead to see where we have opportunities to try to do a little bit better for our students that really need the extra attention. And so at that point, rather than just identifying a number of students that might need a little bit additional attention, we're taking that information and we're using it to actually come up with some action plans proactively for those classrooms. In addition to making those plans for core instruction, we also do make benefit of a partnership with IXL. You may be familiar that you can take the information, the RIT scores from the MAP test, and you can import those into IXL. Teachers are asked to enter that information in for the students in their classes. Whenever they do, what's called a skill plan is tailored for each student individually that gives them a list of skills from the MAP testing recommendations. It shows that they have a need to develop those skills. Of course, we're using IXL to align with explicit teaching. So we're using it to reinforce skills that are taught during direct instruction, but students are also making use of the platform to target their individualized list of skills that they have showed a need to give more attention to. And so if a teacher is having students jump on to complete some of those skills, that's some time that we have worked into a daily rotation, or I'm sorry, a weekly rotation across K to 12. All of our students are working to complete a number of skills to what is termed a SMART score of 80 per week, as dictated by a lot of the research we use to select IXL is linked to an increase in state test scores. Beyond just the classrooms, though, we do have conferences with our students to share the data with them, because what research has shown us is that whenever students are let behind that door, that they tend to take a lot more ownership, and they drive that achievement and that learning, and whenever they know where their gaps are, they can make it their own effort to target in on the areas where they really need to improve. And so we make sure to have those one-on-one conferences between teachers and their students every term. And even prior to when they're taking MAP tests, they're meeting with students and say, here, the system thinks you can make it this many points. Do you think you can hit that, or do you think we can even beat that score? After we have completed MAP testing, we always send home the family reports, which are, albeit basic, whenever requested, families are able to get the laundry list of skills that their students, through their assessments, have shown that they have a need to either reinforce or to introduce, or just to further develop. And so we provide those lengthy documents to families whenever they are interested in working at home and chipping away at some of those skills of need for their students as well. And then once a year, which is actually this upcoming Thursday, we do have data conferences with our families. We invite them in to be able to explore that data a little bit more interactively with them, so that it's not just sending home information that may or may not be interpreted correctly, but it's us giving a chance so that we can actually interpret that with a little more detail for our families as well. And at this point in time, as we look to the future, my team is working through a curriculum analysis and kind of remapping protocol with our teachers. In the next couple of years, we will be even further targeting in on those needs. Great things take time, and it has definitely been a difficult couple of years to get started with this process, but I'm really proud of the work that we've done so far. And I'm honestly just anxious to get started with this next phase, because I do have some big plans for what my team is going to be leading our teachers through and what we're going to be able to achieve because of it. And a lot of that comes from our MAP testing, honestly. That really is the foundation of what it is that we're making happen.
Thank you.
Questions or comments from you or Jack?
Okay. I'm formulating right now, so,
Okay.
Go ahead, sir.
I think you threw out a lot of information there. What are the additional assessments that you don't feel that you need to be doing? The ones that you want to discontinue?
Okay. So in conversations with KCSD in the past, we have been kind of turned on to a couple of products that we began using at the beginning of this 5-year term. So Houghton Mifflin Harcourt, we had used Read and Math 180. So those programs had a native assessment that we had used over the years, and those assessments did provide kind of a backup to the placements that we had identified a likely need for during map testing. But those assessments did not provide anything deeper than what we're getting out of the map testing, and really just told us, where in the progression of these skills that students should begin those programs. So, for placement, that was helpful, but not really so much for informing anything more diagnostic in their needs. At this point, if you're not aware, HMH has actually done away with all of those native assessments, and they now just use map testing for all of those placement decisions. We do also use Dibbles. It was originally University of Oregon and now is run by Amplify. That's one that we stand behind. We still use that one, and we plan to continue to use that one regardless, because we do see value in having that information. And that is, it's K-8 and it's different literacy skills. For those that may not know, for the high school levels, from 9 through 12, we began using the CDTs, and I guess, to summarize it as quickly as possible, the information that we got back out of that has not been further formative or more diagnostic than anything from map testing. I understand that it is aligned to the state test anchors and eligible content, but whenever you're looking at the curricula that we currently have in place, there are crosswalks that we can use to make connections between what we're seeing in the map testing data and what we're delivering to our students through Pennsylvania standards. We have resources that help us to make those connections, and so I can understand the CDTs are giving us the information that's aligned to eligible content. But at the end of the day, looking at that information from my perspective in my position, it has been no more helpful than what we've gotten out of our map testing. And what we're getting from map testing, it has become the universal language at our school that I can really communicate efficiently with the people that I'm leading at this point. So it's not that there's something that's wrong. It's just that the additional layers of assessment have not, at this point, further informed or help us to diagnose or address any of the students' needs that we're getting out of map testing.
So if I heard you right, you said that's true for the reading 180, the CMH stuff. Like, I get that stuff is kind of long gone by now, and the CBTs, but we're still using the Dibbles for that K-8 literacy to help with that diagnostic work to go to that next level of, because I'm with you on the power of the map data to break it down to strand information, so you can really work with students on, it's this area is about numeracy that you're really struggling with, and working with your teachers on, these students need these kind of supports in these areas. And I also get the 912. That's always a tough one for getting the really useful diagnostic stuff with 912.
Yeah.
My hope is that I sent you an invite right before the meeting started. Maybe if we can get together Friday with Megan and Liz and kind of see some of what we're using for that diagnostic stuff, to see if it would be of help. Again, to go one step past what can be provided by map and the strand data. Not that you shouldn't be doing that, because I think you're using it in all the right ways. It sounds perfect. But for those trickier situations when it's kind of hard to figure out, all right, what exactly is this student struggling with? We may be able to kind of learn from what you're doing around map, and then maybe we have something that we're using that might be useful to you as well.
And I agree with you, but us bantering back and forth about what we can use, I agree. I'd accept any help. I just don't see the value of it being in our agreement. Okay, because there is certain grade levels, probably we could be using it, or students. Doesn't mean all 9th through 12th have to be using that. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
We shouldn't be held accountable for that if it isn't beneficial. So putting in an agreement is just making us be accountable. And then we're frustrating some of the students that don't want to even take that test. And you have to understand their mental health nowadays too. So it's all of a package. It's not just, we're going to put it in there because you need it. All kids are different. So we have to look at that.
For sure. And so my understanding of the requirement that's in 6A is about, once the students have been identified through the screening process through MAP, then only those students would have to take some other sort of diagnostic, and not just for assessment, but also progress monitoring and all that sort of thing. So that was my understanding of what 6A is for, and I might have that wrong.
No, you're right.
So
You are.
it wouldn't be all students 9 through 12.
It's not, it's like you said, it is. It's just that those are the students that are already frustrated.
Yeah.
So giving them an additional assessment where we can already point out what they need is, they just don't care about that test and they are not going to perform on it. You know, we can give them all the encouragement we want, but helping them learn is more efficient for us than giving them another test. So I hope that's
Well, I agree.
standing.
And I don't think our students are any different, right? We see teenagers, we
Right,
see
right.
teenagers. And so maybe that's where we can kind of share some of our successes.
Yeah.
And you can share some of yours too, and we can learn from each other about how to get that kind of second and third level data that can help,
Right.
you know, get those students back on track.
Yeah, I agree with that.
That's like I said, the last time and the last couple of times, we work together. And let's look towards the future.
Yep.
Maybe we can help them. They can even help us.
That's, yep.
So how do you do your progress monitoring?
Just in general, across all grade levels?
Yeah, just, how do you keep track of you mentioned you follow their testing and so on, and the results of that, if they start to struggle, or what type of testing are you talking about?
So you're saying for, like, if we're seeing struggles, what testing do we do? Or if we're seeing struggles from one
Well, how
test
do you
term to the next?
monitor? I mean, how do you monitor if they're struggling? What do
So-
you use?
Can I clarify, just so I understand your question? Are you
Yeah.
asking for, if you have a student who's receiving tier 2 or tier 3 services, what are you using to help monitor their progress to see if they're making gains so that they
Right.
can no longer need those tier 2 or tier 3 supports?
Yeah.
Is that
Okay.
what you're asking?
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess that's
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you for that, for the clarification as well. So I guess the most straightforward answer is monitoring the assessment results that we're getting from MAP 3 times a year. You know, we're tracking, not just the scores, not just growth, not seeing whether they've achieved grade level expectations. We're looking at things like their percentile rankings that are norm referenced. Are they actually making gains? Are they moving along from being at the 30th percentile to the 35th to the 40th? Are we keeping eyes on these students that are identified at MTSS, and can we actually show some metrics that indicate that they are making improvements, not just normal growth, but are they actually making the kinds of gains that we need to see to help them to approach grade level more fully at that point? In the interim, of course, because it's only 3 times per year that we're getting these assessments in. So of course, we're tracking everything that's coming from the classrooms. We have a couple of intervention tools that we're currently using. And like, for example, in K-6 ELA, we have a computer-based system that's very short. We just kind of get in on a daily basis and spend a little bit of time. It's targeted mini lessons. So that gives them a little bit of exposure to some language and literacy skills. And we get tracking data based off of that. At any moment, I could pull a report and I could take a look and see, how any one of those students is coming along. And so that's a really quick way to keep tabs on those students as they're working. Through K-12, we do also make use of this. At this point, with some of those other assessments being retired, another tool that's, once again, it's within IXL, is a norm referenced assessment. It's called the diagnostic arena. And so it's a little bit different because it's not something that's a sit down, take it, and get the results test. It's students are spending a little bit of time in this space working. And as they are, then the system continues to generate more up-to-date information as to how the students are progressing as well. So that's another place, the K-12, I can get in. And as long as the student is spending time in there, then I can keep tabs on them, and the students who are identified for additional attention are producing that kind of information so that we can keep up with where they are. So anytime that we're noticing that things are not quite right there, that's my indication to either get with my team, and then somebody can have a conversation to try to dig a little bit deeper. I myself can get into those classrooms and have those conversations. We've had some new programs we've implemented. We've seen some wild success, and so whenever they have shown some success, then those are things we try to move over into the other classrooms that maybe we're struggling a little bit more or not seeing those kinds of gains. And of course, every 2 weeks we have MTSS meetings, and we're checking in on these students. We're sharing what information that we have. Wherever we're not seeing what we need to see, then we try to reassess and make changes if they're necessary. And whether that be changing the practices in the classroom, or if it needs to escalate to a different tier of attention, whatever that may be, we make those decisions. And try something else and see whether a different treatment's going to work to help to get that student where they need to go.
Anything else from them?
Okay. Jeff. Any questions, Bill?
No, sir.
Okay. So I guess we can discuss it. We okay with moving off of that? Are we okay with what they're talking about?
I mean, it sounds great, and I think we're saying the same things in different ways. And so that's why if we could just sit down and kind of map everything out so that I'm not the testing expert, right? And then, so that's why I want to have someone who's really invested in that, kind of look through and hear the same things and talk with you about it, just so that essentially the board can do its due diligence about, if you're doing things that are doing that diagnostic work and have that way of helping progress monitoring and showing students as they're moving between the tiers and what they're doing. If all that's mapped out and we can show that, we can do our due diligence to check it. It sounds great. So, and that's what I'm hoping we can work towards for this Friday is when I sent the meeting.
We're gonna have a meeting at the charter school and go over that.
That's- If that's okay with you.
Not this Friday, next.
No, I'm sorry. Yeah, right. Next Friday. That's my mistake.
This Friday we're
Yeah,
having,
that's
yeah.
right. Yep, yep.
Okay. We'll move on to item number 2 on your list. Students in grade 12 who have successfully completed the Act 158 graduation pathway may be excused from the additional assessments and interventions. I think pretty much we discussed that and we were all okay with that back then. We have really no issue with that.
Some of the state laws have changed, and from my perspective, once the student has met their pathway requirements, there's no need to keep testing after that.
Right. So that one was an okay. The next one was quite contentious. It was increase your enrollment from 475 to 495. And it was brought up at our board meeting that 36.5 kids to 38. And that is in a grade, not in a class like everybody was jumping to the conclusion. The class size is averaging 12 to 16 students per class. So when there were some comments made, those class sizes are way too big. It's not way too big. They were talking about grade size. So if our average class size is 12 to 16, I really do not see a problem with letting them have some kids. They did what they agreed to do in the last charter. But once again, that's just my opinion and that is up to us to decide. So would you guys like to speak on that, Tracy?
Yeah, I think within the agreement, it says that we could have an aggregated amount of 475. So we would like to just restate that as 495, an aggregated amount. Because we didn't really say how many per classroom, how many per grade and all that. We were just trying to point out that we're really only asking if you would divide it out because he's a math person, 2 per grade. So it's actually an aggravated amount of 495.
So you say that would average about 2 per grade? It
depends, yes, because the lottery is kind of funny because there's different rules to it and different ways, kids don't always come in at the same time on different grades and, it's up to us to follow our own lottery process. So it would just be 495 how we see fit. So,
Okay.
okay.
Dr. Redmond.
It's something that's a board decision. I'm staying out of that one.
Jeff, your thoughts on this?
Well, I understand the request, but in looking at it from, the cost standpoint, by adding 20 more students, that's going to cost the district, if we're averaging 20,000 roughly per student, that's, if you do the math, that's $400,000 more dollars. And I just, I just don't think that, that the district, I mean, one, if we did a tax increase up to the maximum that we can do, up to the index, it only returns a little over $500,000 for the district. So
If I can clarify on that one, so it's per 25% of the Act One index, it's about 490,000 for each 25% of the Act One index.
okay.
So a millage increase.
Through Edmund,
Yes,
yeah, could you speak a little more into the mic? I'm having trouble hearing you.
sorry about that. We're just clarifying that 25% of the Act One index would increase district revenues by about 490,000. So the full 7.1% would be something south of 2 million if we were to go for the whole
Right,
Act
right,
One,
okay.
7.1%.
Okay, now, I'd like to say though, that in our own agreement, it says, when making its decision, board members may not consider the financial impact of the charter school on the school district.
So
And
that's
I'm
relevant.
tired of hearing this argument
That
because
is
this is
not
about the kids,
correct.
not how much it's gonna cost. Discussions on fair funding are not required in the comprehensive review and outside the requirements of the law. Bringing fair funding into charter renewal discussions will open a Pandora's box of political debates, which would derail the focus on the requirements of the charter school law itself. What we're talking about is the kids. Whatever money we get for a kid, that money follows that kid. So we can't look at it and we're gonna lose this money. We're sending a kid where it's gonna be better for the kid. Why do we keep bringing this money issue up when we have been told that's not part of it?
If the charter school law was had a fair level playing field financially, that would be one thing, but it does not.
Well, then take it to the legislators and not
We have
try
many
and,
times.
that Jeff, you cannot charge it against them now.
So if I,
You
if I
can't do
could, what that line was speaking to was whether or not the board could consider the financial impact on charter approval. And we're not talking about charter approval, we're talking about inside of that. So assuming that the charter was approved, this is more the conditions of the charter inside of that he's
I
talking about.
understand.
And I understand it's a little bit of a gray area. So we're not talking about so at this point, we're not talking about whether or not we're approving the charter.
I understand that, and that's what we're supposed to be doing, but this is a discussion that's on the list. And if we're gonna say, no, we're not letting them do it because it's gonna cost us too much money, that's not a fair statement. Bill, your thoughts?
I tend to agree with your interpretation, Chris. I agree. It may be a gray area, but I think there's a good possibility we'd lose if it came up for a legal challenge. And again, it's not costing the school district anything. If the kids are going someplace else, the money that we were given to take care of those kids is just following the kids. And I'd be in favor of that. If we need to lose $400,000 someplace else, well, then we have to find a way of doing that. But I don't think the kids should be punished.
Anything else, Jeff?
Nope.
Okay. That's it on that, and we'll hash that out some more later. Yeah, go ahead, Tracy.
Sorry, I just want to say that just because we add 20 kids doesn't mean it's coming from Keystone Central. So we get from Penns Valley, and Jersey Shore, and sometimes Bellefonte, and we have from Midwest. And there's some other schools that are involved in this. So it's not just Keystone Central. So just so you
Yes,
know.
we do not supply funding from other school districts, correct? Okay, so then we cannot fairly say that this is all coming out of our pocket. Am I correct with that statement?
That's fair thing to say.
Okay,
We don't know how it would distribute.
all right. Okay, we'll move on from number 3. We're gonna go to number 4. We had quite a discussion, as you already know, about this thing about the annual appearance before the board. And we kind of thought that if you sent it to all of us and we looked over it and had questions, we could send them to you as a group. And then you could reply to it and we can move on from there. Mr. Johnson, do you have any questions on that?
Are you still planning to do the public presentation? Even with,
For this year?
no, in the
Oh,
future.
sorry. No, we were planning on just sending it over and then you sending questions back for that.
Well, it was my understanding from what we discussed the other night that they would send the information, but they would still come back and do a presentation, because I think it's important that the public hears what's happening at the charter school.
Well, we have public board meetings too, just so you know. I mean, we do present stuff like that
I
at our
mean,
board meeting. And-
our folks.
I know what you mean, but I feel like when we come over here, we were supposed to present and then leave, and then questions were supposed to follow, and that didn't always happen in the correct form of the agreement. So, I feel like we were on trial sometimes when we were over here. So, and that's not how it was meant to be, nor was it stated in the agreement that way. We were supposed to answer questions in writing, or if I chose to come up. It was a choice of mine. So I feel that it wasn't represented very well the last 5 years, so I am not anxious to come back over to do this. So it's just my opinion on that.
When we discussed this the other night at our board meeting, we were kind of okay with the agreement of doing the same thing we do. We email, we hear the info, we read it, and then we ask questions. The part of it that we weren't sure about was, do they have to come back and represent? I don't know if we need to, if all their info, I'm being told, is on their public site. So anybody from the public can go look at it. As long as we get the answers question that we need, I think that's being fair. Do you not?
Well, if they're gonna send us the information and we can provide them with our questions at a time, they can still come and do their presentation of their test scores. I think if you guys are, I would think if you're really pleased with your achievement and your results, that you'd want to share those with Keystone's board. And if you have those questions ahead of time, it's not like we're gonna play gotcha here, which is what I kind of hear you saying. I don't recall that you were peppered with a lot of questions at your presentation. But I guess I don't understand why the hesitancy.
Could we do something per se, let you send it to all the board members? Let us go through it, formulate questions. And Dr. Redmond could send the questions over and get answers. And then if we needed some discussion, say, hey, could you guys come over and we can go over these questions? And if we really didn't have anything to go for or to go forward with, we could say, okay, they don't need to. What do you think of that?
It's not to worry
Right,
about.
no, I don't
I'm
think it
obviously
needs
the
to-
only one here that is interested in that. So
Does it need to be a
I just
mandatory?
feel like that should be a piece that should happen, but
We can always put their presentation up and read it too. Does it have to be mandatory that they come over, as long as we're all working together? If we don't feel something is out of line, why make them come over and say, okay, you're doing a good job, it's not out of line? Just if we have a question, let them have a chance to answer it. And then give them an option. Instead of it saying it has to be mandatory, let us have an option to read it and see. And then if we needed questions, we could ask you. I mean, we're all adults. It's all public, no matter what you do.
It is, and I have to say, I'm hoping that we're going to develop a better relationship with our two
Absolutely.
curriculum committees. Hopefully, there won't be too many other questions after that too. So, I mean, to present the data.
Bill, your thoughts on anything?
I personally would rather just have a well-prepared report than have a presentation. If I have a report that I can read and think about, I think it's more productive than listening and having to respond immediately. Um, If indeed, all Tracy was doing was reading what they had already put in the report, then I think it's a waste of time for them to have to come over and present it at one of our meetings.
So let me ask you folks this. If we move to the point that if we had, you send it to all the board members in one big email. We divulge it, go through it. If we have questions, we get a list of questions put up, send it back to you. You would send us back your replies so we figure it out. And if we cannot understand it, at that point in time, would you be willing to come over and answer those questions and explain them? I don't
Yeah,
think you'd
we
have
don't
to
have
do
a
a
problem.
huge presentation.
Right. Yeah, that could be something we could live with. Yes.
All right, Bill, would you be okay with that? Bill? Jeff, would you be all right with that?
Yes.
What? I couldn't hear you.
That's fine. I guess, I mean,
Okay,
really doesn't matter much.
then did you get that figured out? Bill, you all right with that? Are you still there?
I got kicked off for a little while, so I haven't heard the last minute or two.
Okay. I came up with an idea of when they're ready, they will send us their annual report. And it'll go to all board members. We can all read it independently, get together with a list of questions if we have them, and send them to the charter school and let them send their answers to us. And if we still have if we don't understand what they send back, then we can ask them to come back over here and answer those questions for us and not have to do a super huge presentation. You all right with that?
I think that sounds reasonable. Yeah.
Okay, and Tracy, you folks are good with that?
Yes.
Okay,
Good with it.
with that being said, I think can be the end of this discussion. Is there anything else that you guys need to bring up? Anything else you want to bring up, Bill?
No, I think we're good.
Jeff? No. Okay, we're gonna call this meeting adjourned at 4:49. And I want to thank everybody for coming.
Record.